I want to start with something that happened to a woman named Carol, 66 years old, lives outside Denver. Carol retired 2 years ago, started collecting Social Security, and figured her money worries were behind her. Then her car broke down, her property taxes went up, and her grandson needed help with college. So Carol did what felt completely reasonable. She picked up some part-time work at a local craft store, just to bring in a little extra cash. A few months later, she got a letter from the Social Security Administration that made her stomach drop. Part of her check had been withheld. Money she was counting on, just gone, because of a rule almost nobody explains in plain English before retirement, not after. Carol isn't alone. Right now, there are retirees all over this country quietly earning a little extra money the wrong way, in the wrong order, or in ways that actually cost them more than they realize, simply because nobody sat them down and explained how this actually works. Today, I'm going to walk you through real ways retirees are earning extra income from home, the ones that actually make sense. And I'm also going to show you exactly where Carol went wrong, so you don't end up getting a letter like she did. If you're worried about money in retirement, or you're getting close to it and want to avoid mistakes like Carol's, go ahead and hit subscribe right now and tap that like button too. I'm Jack. This is Jack Retires, and every week we go through the real stuff, the numbers, the rules, the things that actually affect your wallet. No fluff, just straight talk. All right, let's get into it. Here's exactly what happened to Carol, and I want you to really picture this, because it could just as easily be you. Carol assumed that once Social Security checks start, that's just it. That's your income, plus whatever else you bring in on top. No strings attached. But there's a rule that only applies if you haven't hit a certain age yet, and it's the kind of rule that's buried in paperwork nobody reads until after the fact. For 2026, if you're under what's called your full retirement age, somewhere around 67 for most people, there's a ceiling on how much you can earn from work, right around $24,480 for the year. Cross that line, and for every $2 over it, Social Security quietly takes back $1 of your check. Carol didn't go over by much, but it was enough to trigger it, and that's the letter that landed in her mailbox, sitting on her kitchen counter for 2 days before she even had the nerve to open it. Now, here's the good news, and this is the part that actually opens the door to everything else in this video. That limit only exists before you reach full retirement age. The day you cross that line, it vanishes completely, forever. Earn $10,000, $50,000, doesn't matter. Your Social Security check stays exactly the same. And even for the withheld amount Carol lost, that money isn't gone for good. It gets added back into her benefit later. So if you're already past that age, everything from here on out is just extra money in your pocket. No catch, no fine print. And if you're not there yet, don't worry. Most of what I'm about to show you is small enough that it barely brushes up against that limit anyway. Let's start with one of the simplest ideas, and it's something a lot of retirees are sitting on without even realizing it, and that's selling things you already own but don't use. Now, I'm not talking about a garage sale that nets you $40 and a headache. I'm talking about going through closets, garages, and storage units with a different mindset, looking for things that have actual resale value, tools that haven't been touched in years, furniture from a downsizing that's just sitting there, collectibles, even old electronics. Online marketplaces have made this incredibly easy. You take a few photos from your phone, post it, and people come to you. I talked to a guy, I'll call him Frank, 69 years old, who spent one weekend going through his garage after his wife mentioned how cluttered it had gotten. He ended up selling an old table saw, a set of golf clubs he hadn't used in a decade, and some vintage tools that belonged to his father. Total, over $600, for stuff that was literally just sitting there taking up space. That's not a recurring income stream, but it's real money, with zero ongoing time commitment. And for a lot of people, there's actually more of this sitting around the house than they think. Now here's something that might sting a little to hear, but I think it needs to be said. A lot of people spend 30, 40 years building up knowledge in their field, and then the day they retire, that knowledge just sits there, unused, like a tool nobody picks up anymore. That always felt like a waste to me. And it turns out there's a huge group of people out there actively searching for exactly that kind of experience and willing to pay for it. I'm talking about online tutoring and coaching in whatever you spent your career doing. This isn't just about academic subjects either, though if you were a teacher, an accountant, an engineer, anything with specialized knowledge, there's demand for that. But it goes way beyond that. Retired nurses tutoring nursing students preparing for exams, a retired contractor doing video calls with first-time homeowners trying to figure out a renovation, someone who spent 30 years in HR helping people prep for job interviews. These platforms connect you with people looking for exactly that kind of help, usually paying anywhere from $15 to $50 an hour, depending on what you're offering. And you set your own schedule, an hour here, an hour there, all from your kitchen table. I want to pause here for a second because I think there's a fear sitting underneath a lot of this that doesn't get said out loud enough. A lot of people in their 60s and 70s feel like the world has moved past them, like their skills and experience don't translate to anything anymore, especially anything involving the internet or technology. And I get why that feeling exists, but here's the thing. That feeling is costing people money and purpose at the same time. The exact experience that feels outdated to you is often exactly what someone younger is desperately searching for because they can't get it anywhere else. The skills didn't become worthless, they just need a new way to reach people, and honestly, the bar for getting started is a lot lower than most people assume. Let's talk about something else that's become a real option for retirees with a spare room. And here's a version of that idea that doesn't even require a long-term tenant living in your house. Renting out parking space, storage space, or even a driveway. If you live anywhere near a city, a college, a hospital, or an event venue, an empty driveway or a portion of your garage can actually generate steady monthly income, sometimes $100 to $200 a month, just for space you're not using anyway. There are platforms specifically built for this, people renting driveways to commuters, storing someone's boat or RV over the winter, that kind of thing. It's about as passive as income gets. You're not interacting with anyone day to day. There's no roommate situation. It's just space, sitting there, doing nothing, that could be doing something. Now let's talk about something a little different. And this one is for people who genuinely enjoy being around others, because isolation is a real issue for a lot of retirees. And some of these income ideas actually solve two problems at once: pet sitting and dog walking. This might sound small, but think about it from the other side. Younger working people, often with demanding jobs, who have dogs they feel guilty about leaving alone all day, or who are traveling and need someone trustworthy to check on their home and pets. Retirees are often the ideal fit for this. You've got time during the day, you're reliable, and for a lot of people, getting paid to spend time with a dog feels less like work and more like a nice part of your day. Rates vary, but dog walking might bring in $15 to $25 per walk, and pet sitting, especially overnight house sitting, can bring in $50 to $100 a night. Do that a few times a month, and it adds up to real money. Plus, for someone living alone, having a dog to walk twice a week can genuinely change the rhythm of your week for the better. Okay, here's one that almost nobody thinks about. And when I first heard about it, my reaction was, wait, people actually do that? Renting out a car you already own, one that's just sitting in your driveway most days doing absolutely nothing. A lot of retired households have two cars, but one of them, often the second car, an old commuter car that used to drive someone to work every day, just sits in the driveway most of the time now. There are platforms that let you rent that car out to people nearby, kind of like a short-term rental but for vehicles. If your car sits unused 4 or 5 days a week anyway, renting it out even occasionally can bring in real money without you having to do much beyond handing over keys and doing a quick walk around. The insurance and liability side of this is handled through the platform itself, which is honestly the part most people worry about and assume is more complicated than it actually is. Now let's circle back to Carol for a second, because I want to show you what she should have done differently. Not because she did anything wrong exactly, but because she didn't have the full picture. Carol was 66, and it turns out she was actually just 1 year away from her full retirement age. If Carol had known that, she might have structured things differently. Maybe she takes on a little less work in that specific year, staying under the limit, and then, once she crosses into full retirement age the following year, she ramps up as much as she wants with zero impact on her check. Or, knowing that any withheld amount eventually comes back to her in the form of a higher monthly check later, she might have made a completely different decision about whether the part-time job was even worth the temporary reduction. Last I heard, Carol actually went back to that craft store the following year, except this time she walked in already knowing her numbers and picked up extra shifts during the holiday season without a second thought, because she'd done the math and knew exactly where she stood. The point isn't that Carol shouldn't have worked. The point is that she made a financial decision without having financial information. And that's the gap I want every person watching this to close for themselves. Here's my honest take on all of this. A lot of retirees treat the idea of earning extra money as either all or nothing. Either you're fully retired and untouchable, or you're going back to a real job and giving up your freedom. But almost everything I talked about today lives in this in-between space. A few hours here, some unused space there, things you already own, skills you already have. None of it requires a resume, an interview, or going back to anything that feels like your old career, unless you want it to. The fear that keeps people from even looking into this isn't really about the work itself. It's about not knowing the rules, not knowing if it'll mess something up. And that uncertainty alone stops a lot of people before they even start. If any of these ideas got you thinking, especially if you've got a Carol-style worry about Social Security and work, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Tell me what you're sitting on right now. Extra space, old stuff in the garage, a skill from your old job, whatever it is. And if you know someone who's retired and quietly stressed about money, but who you know has something sitting around they could turn into income, send this their way. It might be exactly what gets that conversation started. I'm Jack, this is Jack Retires, and I'll see you in the next one.